Hey guys, this is Fergal from Poker VIP. We are back for part 4 of Have You Got the Guts, the Tournament Edition. As you can see, we have run up a bit of a stack in one of the tournaments that we have remaining, so we're going to record out, see if we can make a decent run at this. So we're coming 5th currently with 30 remaining. We have top 8 pay, min cash is €70. It's a €10 tournament with 1 rebuy and 1 add-on. We availed of the add-on, so we're in for €20. So min cash is like 3.5x what we're in for, and obviously the cash is gold from there, and potentially a €572 score if we are lucky enough to manage to take this down. So without further ado, we're going to jump into the action. Because we're only single tabling, we're only going to be showing the action basically. So anytime I have a hand that I'll consider playing, or that I'm thinking about playing, or that I do play, I will of course be showing it. We aren't going to be showing all of the trivial folds. For example, if it gets raised here with 10-6 suited, obviously we're going to be mucking it. Because I'm doing the intro, you'll see that. But we're basically just going to be showing all of the action hands, which hopefully will make a nice and enjoyable watch for you guys. So without further ado, here we go. I hope you do enjoy, and fingers crossed for a nice deep run. Okay, we're dealt a pocket pair. We have a stack size where we are definitely happy to go ahead and be stealing with this sort of hand. So I'm going to go ahead, make it 1371 to go, blinds of 300, 600. Obviously, if we just take this down here and now, we are absolutely fine with that, which we do. So we chip back up. If we get 3-bet there, we're in an unfortunate spot and we're going to have to fold to most people. But we take it down, so we don't need to worry about that. And if we do get called, we're not all that concerned. I mean, we'll have position once it's folded around past the button. So if either of the blinds came along, we definitely don't mind them calling and getting to play post-flop poker while we are in position against them. Okay, we have an ace and a 9. Absolutely going to be good enough to play if there is no action before us. Again though, if anyone does raise, if Must-Have Oreo does raise, we will actually consider 3-betting on this hand with this bit of a better ace. But he gets out of the way. Let's have a quick look at Storm Spirit. Don't have too much information on him, but so far he had been overfolding. So we're going to go ahead and bring it in ourselves. Again, a sort of spot we really don't want to get 3-bet with this kind of hand, because it's going to be pretty tricky to continue. But it's definitely going to be good enough to go for the steal, and I mean it'll just win just like that, more than enough to turn an immediate profit there. And occasionally we get called and we get to play pots in position post flop, which is fine. The times that we do get 3-bet, it does suck, but we would have had to go ahead and let that go. And we're dealt an 8 and an 8. We will be playing this hand, almost certainly. If this guy opens, we will be re-raising and not planning on folding. It's just a case now of whether we just want to go ahead and rip it ourselves or not. See, the problem is, if we rip, we kind of just leave ourselves pretty vulnerable versus this guy. So we're a little bit too far along there for that. So what we're going to do is we're going to raise pretty big, so it's really clear to this guy that he has 0 fold equity. And then if this guy comes back over the top, we can safely enough muck our hand. And we get that through. We definitely don't mind there. We wouldn't have loved getting that many bigs in, as we are likely just going to be flipping. But the 3-bet will just pick up that pot uncontested a ton of the time when he has a hand that has a very reasonable amount of equity against us. Like he can have 10 jack, 10 queen, king 10, all of those types of hands that are never going to be continuing, as well as a lot of ace x as well that he just can't continue there facing that sort of raise with his stack size, because he has just under 18k. So we started off that hand with 18, 19k, maybe 20k in that kind of ballpark. So he still has enough where he can fold and have a very reasonable stack, so he doesn't want to be getting involved in really speculative situations there. So that 3-bet just puts him in a world of hurt basically. And we managed to take advantage of that and pick up a pretty okay pot. And we've chipped ourselves up to 43k, and we have an ace and a jack, which we will be playing almost certainly again. So we'll stick with our standard raise size, just shy of 1900. So fold to the small blind, who is looking to make a decision. We're not going to love it, but we are going to call a jam from either of these guys. I mean, we have to call 14 to win 19.5. It's obviously it's unfortunate because he has a lot of hands that are ahead of us, but we're doing well enough against his overall range, so we have to make the call and hope he doesn't have the ace king. And we actually have the best hand by far, which we love. Basically, we were oh, and he gets there in the river. That's so upsetting. Basically, we were calling there because he has like a lot of like medium pocket pairs and stuff like that as well. So Ace 10, I wasn't even sure if Ace 10 was in this guy's jamming range. I mean, it should be definitely, but he does look on the tightish side. But again, folding Ace Jack there is just completely out of the question. Really unfortunate there, obviously, that he gets there against us. We could have had like 60-ish K more, something like that, which is very, very unfortunate. But hey, we can't have it all. And we're still in very, very good shape here. We have over 30 bigs, so we're definitely nowhere near in critical mode just yet. Ace 7 here. We have a decision to make. So this guy is down. He's got like 20 bigs left behind. I think we're just going to go ahead and stick the money in. A little bit of an overjam, but as I said, he's just going to be raise folding from the buttons a lot. So we're going to pick up a ton, like a decent number of chips uncontested, absolutely tons of the time. We have an ace blocker to a lot of his strong ace X calling hands, and I mean we're against all his overpairs. We have at least one over. And he calls it off with ace 8. I am shocked at that. We have a lot of chop outs now, obviously, which we do. Him calling with ace 8 there, I think, like ace 7 is so close to the bottom of my jamming range there. Like ace 8 in general is going to be in extremely rough shape against me there. So I think that's a really optimistic call down, even though he was correct that time. But just because you are right one time, like that kind of, even going back to the last hand there with the ace jack, ace 10, just because I was like really ahead there, I'm definitely not going to be saying that that's like an incredibly slam dunk call there, because against his overall range, we're not doing amazingly well, but we're getting a good enough price that we can continue. Ace 8 there against my overall range, I don't believe he would be correct in calling off there. So I think that was probably a bad play on his part, but he was correct that time, so we can't go into too much detail about it. We get the chop though, so we're still in it to win it. We will need a little bit of luck, but we're still, I mean, we've got an above average stack, I think, or at least close enough to it. We're coming 11th to 25. Still a bit of work to do though, and hopefully we can go ahead and make the final table. Pocket sixes we will absolutely be playing here. And if this guy opens, we're just going to jam it again. If he's calling ace 8, he's probably going to be calling most aces, especially if he sees that we're jamming that wide now. So we shall see what happens though. Blinds are up to 500, 1000 as well, definitely worth noting. So we've got 27 bigs, definitely slightly more than I like jamming with this pocket pair, but again, it's the only move for me. We can't raise, and then, like, I mean, if any raise commits us, and I don't want to just flat call here either. There's just so much value in taking down pots uncontested with marginal hands in tournaments at this stage, so... And like that, we're back up to 31k. Like that's exactly what he just snap folded. He was never even considering a call. So those types of situations will arise so often. You can't be too upset about the times where you just do get called and you're behind or whatever, because in tournaments you just have to, like, being the last person to put all their chips in with a lot of fold equity just counts for so much value in those spots. So pocket fives again. We will be bringing this in for an open. Just going to go for the all-in again. Similar spot again. We're a little bit deeper, but obviously these guys, I think they can only call off incredibly tight against us. If we manage to run into it against them, we're super sad, but it happens. Against this guy, we're just going to keep picking on him and look to take some more of his chippies if we get this jam through. If we get called and we're flipping, not what we want, but definitely not a disaster either. If we get called and he has an overpair, obviously we're sad, but hey, can't always live in fear of the overpairs. So he has the ace queen, we are indeed flipping. Good start. Okay turn, he has extra outs now though, and we hold for a huge pot. So we're right back in it now, we're back up to 58k. And we are down to 23 players, I believe. And we have a queen and a 9 of the same suit. So we're certainly going to be defending here. This is not a hand that I want to be 3-betting though, especially this deep. We're getting 4 to 1. It's a relatively speculative hand. It's going to flop well enough, often enough that we can just flat call. Look at this go. Top two. Top two. We're going to check raise here. Mainly because we've got an incredibly aggressive image so far now, so it's entirely possible that this will encourage some shenanigans, especially if he has like a queen or anything like that. I think he's just always going to go with his hand. And he may even come back over the top of his light here as well, potentially. There's also a lot of draws and stuff that we want to charge. If he has 10 jack here, we're going to be very sad. We're not going to slow down though. In fact, we're going to actually size up a little bit. We want to make sure we're charging his flush draws, And if he does have any sort of queen X or anything like that, we want to make sure that we can get all of the chips in the middle by the river. That bet on the turn, it kind of makes him commit as well. So, and as I said, I mean, if he has 10 jack, he has 10 jack. It sucks, but we just lose a big pot, and that's fine. It's going to happen in tournaments. You can't get too caught up on stuff like that happening. But fortunately, this was not one of those times. And we keep the run good rolling. We have the king and the queen offsuit. We'll bring this in for a raise. Trivial call off if this guy jams. Now we're just going to try to figure out how best to get his chippies in the middle. And I think starting off with a really, really small bet where he will have some perceived fold equity is the best way to go about doing that. And he just goes ahead and folds with a really small bet, which is really worthwhile noting. People that you can get away with 25% bets against is really, really worthwhile having, especially when he calls off his stack size. Like I think his decision should be all in or fold pre. I don't think he should ever be playing post-flop poker with 11 big blinds. It just doesn't make any sense to me, especially when I've got such a wide range. Like I can definitely be raise calling a decent chunk of the time, or raise folding rather, a decent chunk of the time. So I think him not jamming pre is probably a mistake, even though there I did have a hand I was going to be continuing with. So we're on break now, and we're going to pause the recording, and we'll jump right back into it straight after. So we'll see how we get on. A decent first hand to be dealt back in after the break. We're going to be bringing this one in for a raise if it's folded to us, and deciding if there's any action before us. We don't need to do that, so we're just going to go ahead. Blinds up, as I said, 500, 1000, so we're going to be making it 2197 as our standard opening size. And we take that one down without a fight, which, again, not a situation that we hate, but we wouldn't have minded some action there either. Okay, we have a 10 and a jack of the same suit, perfectly good enough to bring it in for an open ourselves. Definitely a hand we would prefer just to take it down pre. We have the small blind who we're priced in against to call it off. No one else that we're going to be calling a 3-bet though, unless it's a really small one. But obviously, if Fox here decides to stick it in, there's no version of ourselves that's ever folding getting that price, of course. We got a caller. We don't hate that. We flop overs with the gutter and a backdoor flush draw. All things considered, decent enough flop that we're going to have a c-bet. And we just get the fold through immediately, which is fine. We would have picked up a double gutter on the turn, which would have been a fantastic card for us to double barrel, because the king would be a much better card for our range than it would have been his. But it doesn't come to that, so we just take it down the flop, which is fine. Again, obviously going to be calling a jam here from the button. If gold poker raises after Fox folds, we will have a decision. Trivial call off here. We need to get a little bit lucky, so king or queen, the 9 doesn't really change much. Diamond will do it now as well. We break off, so we lose a small pot. We're not going to be too concerned with the 8.7k pot. Would have liked to win it, obviously, but if we're going to lose a flip, it's better to lose the small ones. That is for damn sure. And unfortunately, the ace deuce suited here. Not going to be good enough to make a call down, I'm afraid. So we have queen 9 suited. We are going to bring this in for a sneaky little raise. 2797 is going to be our raise size of choice. Actually, I'm going to drop that down just by 100. 2697. We are going to be opening as our standard throughout this level. Definitely don't want Fox to come back over the top of us here. They've chipped up a little bit recently, and when they do come back over the top, we're getting a reasonable price, but we are not willing to commit like 3/7 of our stack or 2/7 of our stack. On a hand just due to a reasonable pot odds price, so we're going to let that go. We're still coming comfortably second, so we're still in great shape. There's no need to take marginal flip-like situations there with that kind of risk. So we'll make the fold, and we'll move on to the next hand and look for other spots where we can accumulate. Jack and an 8, we are going to go for a steal here. It's just a case of whether we want to... I'm considering just going ahead and ripping. This guy seems like the sort of player who will 3-bet jam fairly correctly over our opening raise. So we don't want to give him the opportunity and just have to fold, so we're just going to go ahead and rip it ourselves. And we just get the snap fold, which we like. A little bit of a large gamble, but again, like he's just going to be calling off there so tight, whereas this kind of player who is 3-betting a reasonable amount, blind versus blind there, if we just go for like a 2.5 to 3x open, I feel there's a very reasonable chance he is going to come back over the top of us with a much wider range than his calling range, which is obviously a disaster for us. And Jack 8, I mean, when we do jam, we get called. We're never in good shape, obviously, but it'll have some equity. But I think the amount of times that we just take it down without having to see a flop, just when he just snap folds like that, we're going to be turning basically an immediate profit, if not an immediate profit, just from those times alone. And then any equity we have post flop is just a bonus, basically. The Queen 8 suited, we are going to bring it in for a raise. Let's see if we can get this steal through. He goes ahead and he does rip it. We're not calling. Actually, what price are we getting here? There's another all in before us, so it's irrelevant. I'm pretty sure I was going to fold there anyway, but we would have had to call. Oh wow, 3-way all in. This is going to be an interesting hand. Obviously, this guy should always have queens plus, basically. Ace king maybe, I guess, but if he has anything but ace king or queens plus, he is getting it in really bad shape in general. So he has the ace king. Ace king versus ace king versus ace king. How often do you see that? And the Queen 8, I mean, obviously if we see what these guys have, we're actually delighted to call off there with the Raggedy Queen, because we have a chance of knocking out all 3 players. They're blocking each other's aces and kings heavily, and we've got a pretty decent chance of winning there. So if we do see their hands, we're more than happy to get our chips in there, but obviously that is a very, very unlikely scenario in general. We're going to call off a jam here if Fox goes for it. We've raise folded to him once. We're not raise folding a second time when we have an ace in the jack of blue. Especially when we have been raise folding a few hands in the last orbit or so. We have been raise folding a little bit, so we get this one through though, which again, is definitely not a disaster. We're back up to almost 70k, and we have an ace and a 10. We're going to be bringing this in as well. Not as happy to call this off. Not being suited does remove some of its equity for sure. We are going to... actually, do I want to call against this guy? We're getting a reasonable price. Yeah, let's go for it. He has the ace-jack, which is upsetting. Some chop outs, or we can just win. Sometimes you do need to get a bit lucky. Basically, my thought process was there, like over the sample we have, he's 3-betting 20% of the time. So he's going to be 3-betting jamming a lot of hands that we are ahead of. So not necessarily crushing, but he's going to be jamming like all of his king-queens, his 10-jack suits, his queen-jack suited, all those types of hands. I don't think there's ever a scenario where he's not 3-bet jamming there, especially when we have been raise folding a lot. So we're more than happy to get it in those sorts of spots there against his overall range. Unfortunately, he had us dominated, which is of course going to happen some percentage of the time as well. Fortunately, we got lucky though. And versus an 11 or 12 big jam. We're actually going to fold here. This guy so far has been quite nitty. And maybe that is a call actually. That might have been potentially a bad fold. I mean, I don't think it's ever going to be like an amazingly good call, but it seems like it's definitely going to be close and probably more profitable than folding. So we're dealt 7-7 from mid position. We are absolutely going to be playing this hand. If it's folded to us, given the stack depths behind us, I might just go ahead and rip it ourselves. The reason there is that we would prefer just to take it down rather than get it in versus their likely 3-bet jamming range. And just by folding, we maximise the chances that they fold their kind of random overcards they may be prone to 3-bet behind. We're going to be getting 7s in here versus Gull Poker when he goes ahead and jams himself. Just going to ISO re-raise ourselves because this calling doesn't really make much sense at all. If they have a hand they're going with, they're going to be calling our jam anyway, so it doesn't really matter what we do. He has the 9s, which is unfortunate, and he flops us pretty much dead. And yep, that's us dead. So we lose a bit of a pot. We still have 70k. We were at like 90 odd or so not a disaster by any stretch. Definitely a hit we would have preferred not to have, but again, with a decent pocket pair there, I think folding is completely out of the question. Obviously, he's going to have a lot of broadways and probably some worse pocket pairs in his range as well, so we're not going to be too upset about our play. These things, if you're going to play tournaments in any way regularly, you're going to have to get used to these kinds of things happening where there's just nothing really that you can do. Some people might argue that you should fold 7s there, but I strongly disagree. So ace-9 the big blind, strong contender to be played. Just a case now of whether we want to ship it or not. We're going to go ahead and call and see a flop. Not one of the better ones, but I mean not completely awful, but not very good. Because it's 3-way, we likely will just fold to a c-bet depending on the size. But if it was heads up here, if Gull Poker wasn't involved, we wouldn't be folding just yet to a c-bet from Vesna. But yeah, when they bet into 3 people, we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt and let it go. A7 suited here, going to be a very easy ship if it's folded to us. And unfortunately, Fox just raises all in. If they just, like, this is the kind of situation I was talking about earlier when I was saying that we should just kind of jam all in rather than raise call. I probably would have rejammed over here if he had just opened normally. And that puts him in a really awful spot with a lot of his range. So it just means that he can avoid me jamming those types of hands. So we have a jack and a jack. We're not folding here really ever. So hopefully someone raises before us. They do. It's just a case now of whether we want to 3-bet or jam. I think like a 3-bet just looks incredibly strong. So I think we're just going to go ahead and rip it ourselves. So if we take this down, we're up to 75k. If he calls, which we don't mind, we're in a chance to cross the 100k stack mark. But he goes ahead and he folds. Obviously, if he does call there, he will have like queens, aces, and kings there as well, but a decent chunk of the time. But he can definitely call with worse hands. 10s, 9s, all those strong to medium pocket pairs I don't think are ever considering folding. And then he also has all of these kings, these queens, all those kinds of combos as well that we're flipping against. So in general, we definitely wouldn't have minded a call there. So we have pocket 2s here. And if this guy opens, we will re-raise all in. He limps. He can definitely be limp trapping, which is a concern. I still think we're going to just re-raise all in here, though. And he has ace-3. We're actually... I mean, we flop a set, which is wonderful. I think his ace-3 call is extremely optimistic there. Because what the hell is ace-3 ahead of, really? I mean, that seems awful to me. I think raise calling is somewhat reasonable. But, I mean, just limp calling a jam there, it just seems awful. Because even if I'm stone cold bluffing there, I still have like really good equity with pretty much anything. So we have an ace and a king. We are going to do that 3-betting thing. We'll make it just under 8,000 to go. So we're actually very close to the chip lead now. Interesting spot here. I think we are going to go ahead and fire nice and small here. I don't think he's going to rejam here as a bluff because we just look really, really nutted. Like, I mean, I'll be choosing this sizing with all of my strong pairs as well. He goes for the tilting small raise. When we're getting this good a price, we are going to call with our overs and backdoors. We'll pick up the backdoor spade draw. We are going to have to call it off now, unfortunately, with the spade draw. He has the 8, which I was not expecting, but we obviously get there with the champion-like flush. Basically, I didn't expect him to ever have an 8 there. So I'm just going to go through my thought process there because I didn't really have time to go into it in too much detail. So when he, like, I mean, as I said, when he raise calls there from those positions, I don't expect any pocket 8s in his range, or any except for exactly pocket 8s rather. So he can have some like one combo of quads and no other 8x in my mind there. So when he does show us the 8 there, I'm shocked, but he shouldn't ever have it when he raise calls there. So his range there is really strictly limited to overpairs and flush draws, basically, in my eyes. And I don't know if he plays his overpairs as strongly as that. So I felt he was going to be relatively bluff heavy there, and I thought always my ace and king are live, as well as my nut flush outs. Obviously I'm wrong, but that was my assumption there. And we're getting like a pretty damn good price with a potential large number of outs. And as I said, it just seems like he is definitely going to be jamming worse there with like flush draws and stuff like that we're actually ahead of. So it wouldn't have shocked me to see hands like ace queen, for example, with the ace queen flop flush draw and stuff like that. I can't remember, I think it was clubs. We had spades, I think it was 2 clubs on the board. So those sorts of hands seemed way more likely to me than his strong value, like his 8x basically, just given that he 3-bet called pre. So that was my thought process. Obviously I was outstandingly incorrect, but hey. And here it just seems criminal not to take a stab at it here when there is 4 to a flush on the board and he's shown so much weakness. And we go ahead and we take that one down without a fight. And we're in absolutely fantastic shape now after we got very, very lucky there, albeit. We're up to 170k. And do we want to go with this against Mr. Fox. No, we're going to make this fold. Pretty trivial jam here with any pocket pair. If either of these guys call, it's fine. If we take it down, that's also fine. We don't really care too much what happens there. I suppose I have a small preference towards just taking it down without a fight, but again, as I said, it's not going to be a disaster either way. And we're going to just jam again here. We're risking like what, 30k to 30 or 28k to pick up 4k very, very often, and we have a suited ace when we do get called, which will have okay-ish equity. We do get called by the shorter stack, which we don't hate, and he has just the aces, which is obviously a disaster. So obviously we don't have okay equity against that exact hand, but against any other hand, I mean, even when he has a dominated ace, we still win like, what, 25% of the time. If he has a pocket pair that we have an overcard, obviously always with the ace, when they doesn't have aces, we still have like, what, 30% equity, something like that. So, and as I said, we just win it without a fight very, very frequently. So we'll accept the marginal loss though. And we are now down to the final two tables. So we're down to 16 players, top 8 pay, and there's a pretty huge bubble for a €10 tournament. As I mentioned earlier on, it's a €70 bubble. So I would expect play to start getting quite nitty. So we are definitely going to be looking to make some moves, and with the way the stack sizes are, this is absolutely incredible for us. We have 164k, and second place is just below 90k, so there's a huge gap between us. Like, we can actually, it's this guy over here, Beus, however you want to pronounce that. So even if we double him, we're still in fantastic shape. So like, the worst case scenario in a hand is that we double him up, and we're still left in really, really good shape all around. So there are a decent number of stack sizes that we need to be somewhat concerned with, but yeah, we're happy enough. We're very happy with this situation. Ace 4, pretty standard open, and we just take it down, which is pretty much what we wanted. We wouldn't have really liked any action there, so taking down the blinds is fine and dandy with me. The 9-10 suited under the gun. I see no reason not to go ahead and go for the steal as well. It's a different situation. I know we folded 9-10 suited just a little while ago, but there are far fewer rejam stacks here, which is the main key difference. We have this guy and this guy, but given that it's a 7-handed table, we're less likely to get rejams on light because we're opening under the gun. And there's all of these guys that are kind of, they've got awkward 3-betting stack sizes. Fun flop for us. Definitely a fun flop. We're going to hear fire just under a third pot fire, 4997 into 15391, so just shy of a third of the pot. We have a pair and we have a flush draw, so we always have very good equity here no matter what they have. And we want to start getting some chips in the middle. Jack is an interesting card. Reduces his Jack X combos, but just a question now of whether we want to bet again. See, if we bet again, he jams, we're in a really gross spot. So if we can bet again to get value from his draws, but we can also check back and just call down blank rivers. I think that's what we're going to do. Checks again. It's interesting. I don't see much point in betting here. I think if we were going to get value from any of the hands that were going to pay us, it would have been on the turn when he can call us with the other flush draws, with the straight draws, that sort of thing. I mean, he's going to have some better 9x, I guess. I don't think he's going to show us a jack here when he checks twice, but we have a better 9, which, again, I think that makes up a pretty minute part of his overall range there. Maybe we get paid by that exact hand, but like a lot of his other 9, like he can have like King 9 suited, Ace 9 suited, all those types of hands. So maybe we missed a little bit of value there, but I don't think I mind it too much. As I said, like the jack on the turn kind of killed our action a little bit because it just really polarized his overall range. Maybe we should have been betting there though, potentially. We have a 6 and a 6. Strong contender to play. This guy opens, we're just going to rejam all in. It kind of sucks that this guy has 60k, but it's a 20 big blind effective jam with a lot of fold equity. This guy definitely can't call off too wide at all. And this guy will be just raise folding a decent chunk too. He has ace-jack suited, so we just need to win a flip. Great flop for us. Turn doesn't change anything. And we hold, so we have an absolute mammoth stack now. We're up to 227k, with second place currently at 94k. So we have well over double second place, which is just incredible news. We've been running pretty damn well, to be fair. Which you always need to do to go deep in tournaments. It's just the nature of the game. You can play tournaments in such a way where you definitely have a very substantial edge, but the variance is always going to be quite big, so you will always need that bit of luck to make those deep runs and to convert those deep runs into wins. So fingers crossed, that's what we're going to do. Over here, €572 up top, which at the moment we're looking with a very reasonable chance of taking that down. So let's continue and see where we finish up. 10 out of 7 in the big blind. Preferably we will just get a walk here. People are obviously going to be reluctant to steal our blinds given how large a stack we have and how willing we'll be able to kind of play pots basically. So I mean here we're getting 4 to 1. We're never folding here getting 4 to 1 even out of position when we have any sort of reasonable holding. So 7-10 obviously not particularly. It's not a powerhouse, but it's connected-ish. It's 2 middling cards. It's got a decent amount going for it. Getting 4 to 1, it's going to be an absolute fine defend. Just a case now of whether we want to go for the raise or not. I mean, this is a board where he's obviously going to have whiffed pretty frequently. We're risking 11k here to win 14. We'd be doing this with a lot of Queen X here as well. And yeah, I think this is going to be a pretty damn decent spot to look to exploit the upcoming bubble. We've got 14 players remaining, top 8 pay. And this guy has a stack size where he's very likely to cash right now, and if he just like punts his stack off here, if he just kind of just looks to make a light move against us and punts it off, he's going to be absolutely raging with himself. Like, we've been playing for 3.5 hours now. It's not an insignificant time investment, so busting now is really, really upsetting to people. So I think he's never going to want to just punt it off there. And we look incredibly nutted, so I think it's a pretty decent spot to take advantage of the bubble and look to accumulate even more chips. Point to note here now as well, we have... Okay, no, Baus just won that pot. Okay, never mind. We're going to go for the 3-bet call here. And make it just under 14,000 to go. This player is definitely on the more aggressive side. They call, which does not fill my heart with joy at all. This donk bet is interesting. Don't really buy it. We're all in. Oh dear. He has top set. That is a bit upsetting. That is upsetting. As I said, I felt if he had that strong a hand, he would have just checked to us. So I felt when he did donk out that he was more likely to be doing it as a bluff than anything else rather than for value. But he just happened to have it, so we're not going to be too sad about it. Obviously never fun getting caught with your hand in the cookie jar like that. But as I said, even if he has a hand like, say, pocket 10s there, it puts him in a really, really awkward spot where because we're approaching the bubbles so quickly that he doesn't want to kind of punt it off there, because again, we're repping strong nutted pairs basically. And as I said, I would have expected him to check to the razor if he had flopped a set. So I didn't think those types of hands were really in his range at all. Sometimes these things happen. We're not going to get too upset about it. We're actually second place now. We've given him the chip lead, but we still have 150k, and the nearest to us to the top 2 is on 71k, so we're still in very good shape. A bit of a punt off by me, but I'm never going to be too upset about it. As I said, I don't mind my play at all, and if I minded it, I wouldn't have done it in the first place. So you can never beat yourself. Never be too results orientated. I think that jam is going to be pretty reasonable. Okay, we have an ace and a queen again. We will be playing it aggressively again. Hopefully we don't give all of our chippies over to this guy. That would be very upsetting. If we bubble this tournament, I will be quite upset. Because when you've got that large chip lead and you end up bubbling, it's never fun. We're strong enough here that we don't want to just jam and discourage light rejams behind. So we're going to raise call. Olibet is considering doing something. He just goes ahead and folds, and we chip back up a little bit. So obviously nowhere near where we were to start off a few hands ago when we had the 250k out, but we're still sitting on 150k, still incredibly healthy. So we're definitely not sad about the situation at all. We're down to 13 players now, so we have another 5 to go before we have burst that bubble. Ace-9 suited, we will absolutely be bringing it in for a raise here as well. We kind of have to call off here. We're getting almost 2-1 on our money, so we're never planning on raise folding. We haven't dominated, which unfortunately he hits his 6. We definitely won a pot earlier on when we got it in dominated, though. We can't be too sad about it. And as I said, tournaments, these things are always going to happen. There's going to be so many swings and so many situations where you just get all the chips in the middle. There's nothing else you can really do. And you just have to let the chips fall where they may. I mean, we opened ace-9, which is definitely going to be a profitable open. We called the jam, which is absolutely going to be fine, getting the price that we were getting. We were in one of the lucky situations where we were ahead, but I mean, he could have just as easily had ace-king there as well. It would have gone the exact same way, and we would have been in rough shape. So just because we were ahead and lost post-flop doesn't mean that we should ever be getting like upset about it or anything like that, because, as I said, there are a lot of other scenarios where we're getting our money in there in rough shape. It was just happened to be one of the better ones. So there's no point in getting tilted or getting annoyed or anything like that. But we would like to win some chippies back, obviously, as soon as possible. Okay, we get called. Don't mind that. We have second pair. It's going to rate to be the best hand pretty frequently. We're going to check this back. Queen is pretty bad for us, to be perfectly honest. We're happy to check this down, to be honest. I don't see much value in betting here. If he leads, we're going to be in a tricky spot. We're happy to check this down. He has the 8 and the jack, which is pretty sad for us, but we're not going to be too upset again. I think I'm happy with every decision I made at every point. By not betting the flop, we saved ourselves a bit of money. We could have started bluffing on the turn, I guess, and probably folded him out with the turn and a river bet, but we had enough showdown value that I didn't think that was necessary. So again, I'm okay with how we played it. We lost the hand, but I think we played in a perfectly reasonable manner, and that's all that you can do. Okay, we dealt a king and a 9. Seems like a perfectly reasonable hand to bring it in for steal. We're down to 11 players, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at our table. I definitely don't mind being at the shorter handed table in the slightest. Given the layout that we have here, where we have a 65k stack, 50k, 60k, like these guys we can put under a lot of pressure. And if we do double them, it's not a complete disaster. Like, we still have a okay stack. Obviously, we'll be very annoyed if we do manage to do so. If we do manage to double them, I mean. But in general, it's a much better setup for us than it is for them. So we're going to just fire one and done here. Expect this guy to just check fold a pretty reasonable percentage of the time. And when he does continue, we have a very trivial just give up. We don't have to, though, and we're back up to 124k before we invested our big blinds, and we're just going to have to fold to this jam, unfortunately. Wouldn't hate to see someone else go along with it, obviously, because the more people we bust, the sooner we get to the bubble. Although the bubble isn't actually a bad thing for us because, oh, we do have an all-in. So this guy is reshipped. I'm going to assume he is going to have a very strong hand in general here. I don't think he's going to be looking to punt off too light too often. Ace-9 suited is definitely lighter than I would have expected him to go with there. And he is doubled up the short stack. I think that's a pretty bad get in there. With this many people left to act behind, I think that's a pretty loose get in. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. If it's folded to us here, we are just going to rip it here for not tons and tons of big blinds. When there is a raise, though, we just let it go. Okay, so we have a king and a 10. Pretty reasonable chance we're going to play this. We can rejam over this guy, we can rejam over this guy, we can definitely rejam over this guy. So, and just put him under like incredible amounts of pressure. I'm not going to love, obviously, if we manage to get it in versus this dude, Bonanza B. But he's going to be raised, he seems pretty active, so he's going to be raised folding a huge percentage of the time here, I would assume. So we are going to go for the rip, and if we do manage to get it in, let's hope we get a bit lucky and stack him. We're all in, dealer. So he's thinking about it. I'm guessing that means he's going to fold. If he had a hand he was going to call with, I think he'd just be snap calling. I think it's very unlikely he has a hand where he's actually genuinely thinking about calling. He's just doing that Hollywooden thing that people love to do. Excuse me. Though he really is thinking about this one, maybe. Nah, he just fold. As I said, usually, I mean, like those sorts of decisions, it's usually fairly cut and dry. I don't think he was ever... People don't tend to seriously consider it. People just don't like snap folding, so they want to feel like they're making the other person sweat or whatever. So we do get the fold through, though. We're still coming second with 10 remaining now, so we're on the bubbles bubble. So next person who busts will leave us on the stone cold bubble. And with that in mind, I think we're just going to rip any two versus this person here. They have to call it off incredibly tight here, because they have a stack where like there's a lot of people shorter behind. We've got, what you can't see the stack sizes, we have one guy on just under 10k and another guy on 22k. So basically, this person is pretty much guaranteed to cash if they just fold. And as I said, given the size of the bubble, it's a €7 bubble in a €10 tournament. They're really not want to just punt it off. Like say if they have like ace 10, it's a really awkward spot for them. So they have to call incredibly narrow there. All right, guys, we're on break now, so I'll be taking a 5-minute break, and we'll be back to it then. Okay, we're back from break. As you notice, I just grabbed a quick jumper there because it is pretty gosh darn cold. We are on the stone cold bubble. We're going to be raising the a7. I was just contemplating whether I want to just jam there or not. I think raise folding is going to be better because people are going to be playing pretty damn tight. They've played for 4 hours already. They're not going to want to have bubbled. Oh, and we actually just made the money. A table has just moved across here. Let me just bring it back up. So the bubble has actually burst. So we are officially in the money and on the final table, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go. Let's go.